Hey everyone, I think we might as well get started. It's 1 o'clock and don't want to keep you any longer than we have to. Thanks a lot for joining today. I'm Simon Oldham, CEO of QJumpers, and I'll be giving you a bit of a presentation around AI and particularly sourcing with AI for sourcing for talent. So I'll give you a demo of our AI sourcing product, but I'm also going to give you a little bit of a look under the hood of how some of the AI works, because I think there's a little bit of not so much confusion, but just lack of knowledge in the user space of using AI in recruiting. So the more transparency we have in this, I think the better, so that people can be confident in using the technology. So I'll share my screen with you. Okay, and we should be good to go now. If you can't see my screen, that's sourcing talent with artificial intelligence and our logo there, then someone could type in the message in the chat. So I thought I'd start off with just a little bit of an update on today's employment market and some of the factors that are impacting us when it comes to recruiting. So just about everywhere in the world, particularly New Zealand, Australia, UK, USA, unemployment is at near record low levels. And also, there's lots of different factors, one of them being the lack of talent, but we've got wage growth, which are also at really high levels, the highest we've seen in over 10 years. We have immigration problems. Different countries are experiencing different things. Here in New Zealand particularly, we're a bit slow on opening up our borders to talent, which makes it hard to recruit and also impact on other factors around that and the talent shortage. There are more job openings than there are people looking for work. So you would have potentially seen, if you're in New Zealand and Australia, Seek's got a campaign about the great job market at the moment. And there's so many jobs out there because there's not enough applicants applying for the job. So people are having to re-advertise jobs again and again and again to try and find talent. And I think what people are starting to realise is that the normal traditional models of trying to find talent just aren't working. Job boards aren't working like they used to be. And we have had the great fortune in New Zealand and Australia to have just one or two major job boards that we could advertise and in the past find new employees. It's no longer like that. Things are a lot tougher. And the number of job applicants per job coming through these channels, the job board channels, traditional ways that we find talent in the past, have dropped significantly, over 50% in the last 12 months, and probably that amount again the previous 12 months. In fact, just before this presentation, I saw an announcement from Seek talking about how in New Zealand they're going from an average of 50 applicants to job to now a handful of applicants per job. So it's a tough market. And we've got what is known around the world as the Great Resignation. People resigning from jobs left, right and centre, and that hasn't finished yet. There are stats that show it's starting to slow down, but it's still, there are a lot of people still looking to quit their job if the right opportunity comes along. So moral of the story, we're in a tough market to recruit for staff, and we should be looking at ways of doing this differently. Now is the catalyst, now is the time. Adjust your strategies and look for ways, new ways of finding talent. There are some positives in all of this. There's some factors on our side. It's not all doom and gloom. For example, workers are wanting to be approached if the right job comes along. So there's been lots of different surveys out and about, but between 45 and 68% of employees who are currently employed in a job are open to change jobs if the right offer comes along. And we also have another important factor that people want to be found. So they are putting more and more information on the internet now, especially the younger generations. They really are not worried about what information they put on the internet. They don't mind people seeing that information, finding that information. In fact, they want people to see them. So that actually works in our favour when we talk about AI and how AI works and data. So we now have, with AI and data processing technology, we have the tools to be able to collate all of this data and data that we find on the internet, for example, and use it in our favour. So things aren't all bad. I wanted to, before I go and demo our system, the AI talent sourcing product of ours, just give you a little bit of a background into what the kind of technologies that are being used in AI technologies are being used in recruiting and sourcing. And the couple of main ones are really natural language processing, NLP for short, that's usually used, which is a way for the computer to read words, make sense of those words and transcribe those words and potentially put them into some kind of structured data table. So in recruiting specifically, if you talk about CV parsing, natural language processing can read a CV, it can understand what a job title is, it can understand what a skill is, it knows dates, and it knows where it should put those and can complete an online profile from a CV. Now, this is a really good piece of technology in two ways. One, it means the candidate experience is a lot better because they don't have to fill out an online profile. And if they have to do that, often they won't do it because it's too much work and they'll go somewhere where it's easier to apply for a job. And the other one is if you've got their profile online in a structured way, it's now data that technology can use. Instead of just having a CV, which is an attachment, you've now got data, the same information, but the AI can read the data and we can now use it to our advantage in recruiting. The other main technology that we use is machine learning. So that's where the technology learns from what it sees. And if we use it in conjunction with natural language processing, for example, if the AI is using natural language processing to read a CV and it's trying to structure the data into an online profile and it sees a word that it doesn't know, what it can do with machine learning is it can kind of take that word and plonk it in its memory banks over here until it sees that word again. When it sees that word again, it's looking at the words that are surrounding it to try and understand meaning. If it still can't work out its meaning, and usually it takes thousands and thousands of data points for this, once it's got enough of these data points that it can understand the context of the word, the meaning of the word, it can now place it in a structured way in what we call a lexicon to be able to use in the future. So what it's done is it has taught itself the meaning of this word. And that's where we can start getting some magic because things are changing so fast. Jobs are changing so fast. Job titles, skills are changing all the time. So with machine learning, we don't need to continually reprogram or add things into it. It just learns itself. And if I put this into, I guess, a pictorial view in terms of how machine learning works and natural language processing, this is an example of a skills lexicon, soft skills, this one. It's kind of like a ball of wool, a 3D ball of wool where you put words in certain places based on how close they are to another one, so the meaning of another one. So if you have a look here, you've got kind of verbal communication, but then you've got other kind of communication points around it. And so when you have natural language processing, effectively what you can do is place words in proximity to each other based on how closely related they are. And when the machine learning kicks in, once it's got the meaning of the word, the machine learning can come in and place it where it thinks it is closely related to another word. The benefit of that is that when we are using technology to read a CV or using technology to read a job ad to understand the meaning of the job ad and create a search criteria, you do not need to say all of the skills that you're looking for, because it will already know based on how close the skill you put that you need. If you're doing a search, for example, if you put in verbal communication and in a CV, it has a different word, not verbal communication, but maybe active communication, it knows that it is closely related to that. And depending on how closely related it is, defines how well matched it is and can help with the rankings. So it's just, I guess, trying to give you a little bit of an understanding of how the technology works. And I'm going to show you how we actually use it in action soon. I've thrown this slide in here just for your information because I find it really, really interesting. If we look at the US market, in New Zealand and Australia, we're often following what happens in the US, especially when it comes to privacy and Europe, of course. In the States, they've got a Commissioner of Equal Employment Opportunities, and this guy has a very important role because he decides how EEOC is going to be run and managed in the States. I was at a conference in March where he had some key points which, in the grand context of things, probably will impact us at some point. Not right now, but it'll filter down. But what is really interesting is that he has confirmed that AI can eliminate bias. I mean, we in technology already know that, but there's been a big lot of media talking about how AI can introduce bias. It can do both. It can introduce bias if it is not done properly, if the model is not trained properly or the algorithms are wrong. But conversely, it can also be created or trained such that it actually eliminates bias. He then said that the algorithm does not matter and the code does not matter in what you're using. What is important is the results that you're getting from the algorithm or the code. And where that is, I guess, good news for suppliers like us that do use AI and are trying to innovate, it means that we don't actually need to tell you what our algorithm is. We don't need to give away our intellectual property, but we do need to tell you what it's doing. And you, as a user of AI, you should be actually doing some manual checks to make sure that the AI is not introducing bias. So these are some important points about AI, and I think we'll start seeing a little bit more of these trends coming through New Zealand and Australia shortly. So back into, I guess, looking how AI works. This is a little bit of an example of one of our technologies that we're using. It's not our AI sourcing technology, but just something that can help you kind of understand what we are doing with technology to help create some AI algorithms to help you guys recruiting and getting to the best candidates as fast as possible. So here's an AI matching example. So for example, you've got a job, you advertise your job. We use the technology that we talked about before, natural language processing, to understand what a skill is. We can work out where the location of the job is, what the job type is, education level, experience level, and we can see what a job summary is. When a candidate applies for a job and they upload a CV, same thing. We can find out by natural language processing and understand what the skills are, the location, preference, qualification, spelt wrongly, ignore that, experience level, candidate summary. Once we have these, what the machine does is it then starts to compare how similar the skills are of the candidate to the job. And if we go back to that ball of wool, it's not reliant on the candidate having an exact match. I still see articles today. I saw one talking about how teaching candidates to write a CV in a way that can match the technology and saying that you have to use the right keywords. That is not true. Technology and AI is so good now that you don't need to have an exact match, because the machine will know how closely related that word is to what they're looking for in a job ad. And even the job ad doesn't need to say the exact skill or experience it's looking for, because the technology knows what it is and how closely related to other things it is. So that's one of the benefits of using AI. You can have a really bad job ad and still get a really good result. And same with CVs. A lot of candidates in technology, they don't write the best CVs, for example, but now they don't need to. So we can see those, we can match them up, and how closely related they are, and that kind of uses almost like a cosine similarity equation formula to work out how closely related they are. And we get a little subset here. We put in some weightings, and we get a score for each of those different criteria, and spits out a total score at the end of how closely related the candidate is. And it shows a recommendation so it can rank them, best match to lowest match. But where the magic happens is the feedback loop. So there's different ways of getting feedback. In this example, we've got feedback from the hiring managers, from how well did this employee that you hired, are they a great fit? Are they working out really well for you? If you answer yes, then the machine thinks, wow, I've done an awesome job, I'll keep on doing what I'm doing. If you give it a really bad score and say, no, that was a really horrible hire, it'll then stop and say, hey, I've done something wrong here, and it'll plonk that into its memory banks, and it'll look for similar trends of where it's done it wrong to work out why it did it wrong, and then it'll slowly make adjustments to try and get it better and better and better. But it's not only relying on manager feedback, it also looks at how far through did an applicant get in the job. Did they make it to the shortlist stage? Were they interviewed? Were they hired? Because all of those do give an indication on how good a match the candidate was. So that, I just was showing you that as a little bit of an example of how the technology can work in certain circumstances, matching candidates to jobs. But now what I want to do is actually go into AI talent sourcing and show you this tool, which is a recently new tool that we've developed. So I'll just give you a bit of an overview of what it is. So it's a tool that searches for talent through the web. So it's not relying on a database to search. It can search databases, but most of the data it gets is actually from the web, publicly available information. So it automatically reads your job ad, and it works out the ideal person specification using natural language processing, the tools I talked about before. It then goes and searches publicly available information and creates online profiles of candidates from the data that it finds, and then presents the top ranked candidates. It does a real-time update of any data. So if it actually brings back all the data and then goes out again and sees if it can find anything new, like contact details, job change, company change. Using this technology, you can recruit by skill. So with jobs changing so quickly and technology changing so quickly, there's not a lot of people available that have the skills that we need in certain jobs. Well, not so much the skills, but the experience. They may not have the experience, but they may have the skills. And so you can recruit for skills using this technology. You can also recruit for older workforce, people who used to do the jobs that you're now recruiting for. Older people might be interested in getting back into the workforce or staying in the workforce. You can recruit for diversity as well. Where does it search? So it searches wherever it can find publicly available information. A key starting point is LinkedIn, because that information is structured in a really nice way for the technology to be able to read and understand. But that's just a starting point. We search, for example, also there's 3 things in Facebook that are really good pieces of information if it's public. That's where they live, their job title, and the company they work for. Nothing else is of interest to the technology, so we won't go any deeper than that in that social media platform. Online websites, corporate websites, a lot of people have their company structure. If it's if it's a public company, they have annual reports which have to be public. If someone writes a blog, someone comments on a blog. In the technology sector, developers spend a lot of time on GitHub and Stack Overflow asking questions about problems they have. And other people answer the questions, and then other people rate how well they answered the questions. And all this is publicly available information which are talking about skills and technologies that can add to their online profile without them even actually knowing about it. So it has access to over about 400 million profiles at the moment and growing. So, summary, it uses natural language processing to assign value and meaning to words and phrases. It can differentiate between 24,000 unique different skills and 2 million lexicons. It can recognize slight differences in phrasing or title to indicate the same experience or different, over 93% accuracy. And a key point here is, unlike LinkedIn, it actually verifies candidates' claims of experience and expertise. So LinkedIn is all just what people say they can do, not necessarily what they can do. So if we find something on LinkedIn, we go away and try and validate that that is true. So I will swap over to my internet and I will log in. And share my screen. Okay, so it says I'm sharing my screen. And you can see this tool here. So this is our AI sourcing tool. And what I'm going to do is I'll show you how it works. So this is a quick search area. So for example, you could come in here, put in a job title, software engineer, and we can say, okay, we want Java as a keyword. I'm just going to put in here New Zealand as a location, and I'll click search. So what it's doing now, it's going away and searching the web for this job title, this keyword, people in New Zealand. It's collating the data and creating the profiles of the people. It's always dangerous doing a live demo, but I'm sure this is going to work fine, and it did. So here we go. It's come up with 1,020 people, which is cool, but that's too many people to recruit for. So we have this advanced search area. Click that. It's got lots of different fields in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this and be more specific. Let's put Christchurch, New Zealand in there. And then you can see all the different sort of categories we've got. You can also choose, must have, must not have, nice to have. And this means you don't need to be a Boolean expert to use this technology. Let's put in here SQL. So that's a database. And let's do the search again. So now it's a more advanced search. We've gone down to 184 people. And it ranks them. So this person here has been put at the top. Let's just open a profile to see what you can see. So you click on their name, and then you can see in here where their expertise lie. So this guy's pretty good, SQL, Java, all the things that we were talking about. And there's other categories. You can see their work history, and this is actually real live data. This is a real person with all of their information publicly available if you wanted to spend a couple of days trying to collate it all. So that's what that person's profile looks like. You can get their contact information in here, and you can, if you like what you've done here, if you like the results, so if you're looking at the results, here are the kind of skills that people have got in a summary. Here is where they worked. To get more details, you click into them like I just did. But if the results are good, you can now save the search. I won't do it because I've already done something similar. And every time you come back into the system, you can come in and click on your View Save Search list and search again. But what that does is it does a real-time new search on the same criteria. So it's saving the search criteria and bringing back new results. Most of the people will be exactly the same, but often you'll get new people in there than what you didn't have before because it's a real-time update. You can see who you've invited or communicated with, this little envelope here. If it's got a green tick, that means that they've opened the email that you sent. And if they've opened the email that you've sent, then cool, let's get onto them quickly because they could be interested in your job. You can add them to the talent pool if you like them. So you can create candidate lists or pipelines of talent for future. So add to talent pool. I've created let's use Java developer, save. Now those people are in my talent pool. If I come to my talent pool, you've got these people who you've saved from searching previously, but they can be grouped into their different candidate lists or profiles. So for example, if I wanted to filter by Java developer, just click that. Then I can actually come in here and also do another search. So SQL, and that's narrowing it down to 6 people. And then I can even search by tags. So if I've done a tag for someone here, software engineer, but if you were using this on bulk, you'd have a lot of people there. And then you can select all, you can email them. If you've got our applicant tracking system, you can invite them to the job. Or if you've got another applicant tracking system, we can integrate it with it. It's got a pre-built integration tool. And if you do that, you can get the job details from your ATS and feed the candidate straight into there. And then if you come back into AI talent sourcing, your saved searches will still be here. This is the one I just did. Click up that. It's now going to do that again. The thing is, when you click on this person's name, again, it's going to do a new real-time lookup and bring back what is the latest information. And that's really a big benefit compared to traditional talent pools, which is reliant on the candidate to manually enter their own information. This way, they don't enter anything. It finds their information on what is public. And that is the AI talent sourcing tool in a nutshell. Really, really quick kind of a demo of how the tool works, a little bit of explanation about the technology behind it, and hopefully there's something in there that helps you in terms of understanding AI. but also a look into how AI talent sourcing can work and the advantages of using this kind of technology versus traditional technology in sourcing. If you do have any questions, we're out of time now because I've talked too long, but feel free to feed them through to sales@qjumpers.com, and we can get back to any questions that you may have. And, stop my share now. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming. That's our 30 minutes, and I don't want to take up more time than that, but email if you have any questions, and we can take you through a very much more informed kind of a demo of the product and talk about technology if you want to.